I really hated those last levels. I'm going to keep this really short. I'm going to keep this super short. Every single time I play a game like this, not just like this, but every time I play almost any video game, a single player video game, at the end of whatever story or campaign they have going on, they chock full of every possible shit that they can do. And I mean every kind of thing. If there's any sort of mechanic or function, anything that they had at the other levels, they all force it into the final stages. Most of the time, this causes a situation where you don't really have any fun, because everything is designed to work in such a specific way that it's not really designed to work together one after the other. It becomes unenjoyable. This happens in action games, this happens in platformer games. Most games I play that are single player, maybe even other than RPG perhaps, most of the time, all the mechanics, they really blend everything into just a giant melting pot, and they become largely difficult due to the nature of how everything doesn't really blend together very well. So it becomes like a cheese fest. It becomes a trial and error. It becomes you just do it over and over until you hit it the one way you're supposed to. It happens a lot. It happens in almost every video game I play. So this rant is going to be very short and to the point. I don't like it. I've never liked it, and I'm probably never going to like it. In the past, it's made me completely sink games that had some merit to them. In this particular case, the game is pretty fun on its own. And I just can't quite say whether or not I want to sink the whole game because of the last couple of stages. The last couple of stages sucked. They weren't fun. They weren't proper crash platformers. They were forced. They were trial and error. They were just unenjoyable. I had no fun in them. Sucked out all the fun. But they weren't so horrible to the point where it removes all the fun I had to the previous levels. Because, honestly, it was only like this last 3 or 4 stages that had that kind of bullshit. And to be honest, really it was just the masks coming in one after the other that I didn't like. You're never going to be able to do those in one shot. Nobody could ever realistically do those one and done, because they are just designed not to be that way. You don't know what's ahead, so you're just going to get fucked. That really took a lot of the wind out of my sails for this game. I like the game a lot. I think if this stage never existed, I would actually think this game is really good. I would think it's a good game. You know, I would easily say this game is worth $40. Easy, all day $40. However, with this last stage in place, I don't like it. It's brought down my general fun of the game, and I really feel like at this point I would not want to encourage people to play this game. Because that really just sucks, right? It has to be a fun experience from start to finish. And at some point, if at any point it becomes not fun, that reflects on the whole game. It goes all the way backwards. All those nice stages that I thought were really enjoyable, that didn't feel like trial and error. It didn't feel that way. It felt like I could do this. I could get this done if I just focus a bit more. I felt like those are, and then I would one and done some of the stages. Even in the later half of the game, I'd still would do it. I like that. That's really fun. Not possible with these. And so I feel like the whole game really just took a big nose-word dive because of the last stage. The last 4 stages. The last level, I guess I should. The last world. So, where would I sit on this game? I would not really suggest this game that much. Croker is a good example of somebody who's interested in the game. I would definitely suggest to him not to buy it at full price. 100% avoid 100% purchase. Maybe if you can get some kind of a deal, if you can get like a half off price, if you can get $30 or less, then I think you can have a good amount of fun with the game. But there's no way more than $30 for this game. I just don't feel that. I don't think it's worth it. The last couple of stages definitely got me hurt to the point where I just don't like it. I don't like it. I don't even value the earlier stages as much as I did. This is a rant that I have every single time I get to this point in these kind of games. And I'm here again. It's like, this is a well-documented truth that I don't like it when everybody crams everything at the last moment just to kind of like final finale, but it becomes to the detriment of how you were playing the game. I think there's a lot of people out there that can segregate certain sections of a game so that they can enjoy the whole thing and they don't have to think about that one or two moment where it was complete bullshit. Fine. Those guys will probably enjoy this game. If they buy it at full price, they might not feel so bad. Personally speaking, though, one bad apple ruins the whole bunch. You've got to hit your points. You got to be good. There was a better way to cobble all that shit together, and they were lazy. They just wanted to be all complicated and difficult about it. And then in addition to all that, it just feels real weird to me that they offer a retro mode that is clearly a much harder version of the game while making this game as hard as it is. It didn't even really feel that hard for most of the game. It's just this last level felt hard. And I hate calling it hard because is it really hard though? It's just trial and error. If you know what's there, then you've got a good idea of passing it because you only got one way of passing it. You just got to get your really bad controls down, and then that's it. For this last segment alone, I definitely don't encourage this game to be purchased. I wouldn't even say you need to play the game. I would say you can bypass it. But if you're interested in Crash, if you've played the old ones and you want to give this a shot, you've got some good feelings for Crash, I don't think this game will make you hate Crash Bandicoot games. I just think this is a very weak title in terms of a Crash game. I think they did a good job in making it a platformer, but it doesn't really feel like Crash Trilogy. To get further into the point, to move past my issue with the last couple of things, my main issue with the game is definitely the control scheme is not good. I don't like it. It really doesn't work well. Not only do I just not like it, but from an unbiased standpoint, the momentum you generate when you move your character, the way the character moves, the delay, the hang time on the second jump and stuff, a lot of this is stuff that isn't how the previous games worked. And so it creates a drastically less in control experience with this character in this game. In this kind of a game, you need more control. So it's not the worst controls I've ever felt, but it's definitely not good. It's not good controls. Not good controls. Man, it's frustrating. When I think about it, when I think about some of the things that happen, it's very frustrating. But on the plus side, it does have some Crash isms to it that I enjoyed from the trilogy. And for the most part, I enjoyed most of the levels. So if you can just cut off that last bit, I would fully endorse the game for $40. If you can cut off that last bit. Most people are not going to be able to do that. Most people are going to take this as a full package. I just don't think it's worth any money at all if you're not like a real fan of Crash, if you're not really into Crash or platformers. I just don't think this is a game you really need to grab. Especially not for $60. No way for full price. You can get $30 if you're into Crash. If you're not into Crash, it's got to be less than that. Maybe a $20 game or something. A PSN, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a PS Plus game in the future. That's probably what this would definitely benefit as. Definitely. But it's nowhere near worth the asking price that they put out for. It's not even close. Even if you chop that last bit off, I mean, the controls suck. The controls suck. I really want to get that out there. I really don't like the controls. They just don't feel comfortable. Like, I can't really... when you play a game like Mario, the game has a consistent control scheme that you always feel throughout. In this one, even before you add in the mask's powers, it doesn't feel that consistent. It feels like the momentum changes based on your character position. If your character looks away and you need to go the opposite direction, if you jump and then turn, the character actually pivots in place to face the direction, and then he begins moving. No game does that. You need to actually have the character begin moving in that direction while turning in that direction. You need to do both. It's so silly that he jumps, spins in place, and then starts moving. And you lose so much momentum compared to if you jump and go in the direction you're already facing. I just don't like it. That's not Crash, and that's not fun. I don't know why they thought that would be interesting or good. And there's this other thing, right? This shadow thing. Where's the shadow? This enhanced shadow. I left it on because, I don't know, I didn't care. Honestly, this thing didn't help as much as I thought it would. Because there's such a weird thing about depth in this game that the shadow just didn't really help that much, you know? There's a lot of times where the shadow just kind of confirms if... You gotta jump by feel in this game. So even if you have this on, jumping without it is probably very close to having it on. Because you really gotta jump in this game with feeling. You gotta know... You don't know it, but you can feel that your character might make this jump if you put this much, momentum behind it, and you're this far, and you're this kind of, you get a sense of it. In Mario or something like that, that sense of how far you're going to jump is always a constant, and it's very rare that you have to change that up. But in this one, the character is almost always changing it up. Just oftentimes he's changing it up. It makes it harder to gauge distances, and then you've got this camera angle, and the perception is really difficult. So, it doesn't come together in a really enjoyable way. It feels flawed. I guess it's a good way to put it, is that it feels like a flawed system. Even though it comes together in a way that you can play, it just doesn't feel like it was really designed to do what it's doing. That's a weird way to say it, because it's Crash, and it's supposed to just be a platformer. The other side of this is this modern here compared to retro. Retro gives you lives, and when you run out of lives, you redo the whole level. That I said it earlier, and I'll probably have a separate video for that. It just feels weird because at the start of the game, they make it seem like this modern recommended mode is easy mode, but it's actually normal mode. And then the retro mode is hard mode because of the way they construct the stages. I felt like in the past Crash trilogy games, having lives was justified because the stages, by and large, were pretty approachable. You can generally beat them, and it wasn't a trial and error effort all the time. Maybe one or two had that, but for the most part, you can get through it without a whole lot of frustration. That makes having lives reasonable and exciting. In this one, they very clearly did not want you to have them because they just made the difficulty and they really racked it up really high. Very strange. And the way that they present it as normal or easy or something, because I thought modern would be journalist mode. But this is definitely not journalist mode. This is not as journalist mode as I thought it would be. These two things, I would almost argue, if you actually want to try and enjoy the game, you need it to be like this. I just don't know how you're going to get any fun at all if you have retro or shadows off. Honestly, I'll take the shadow part out because, you're jumping by feel anyways. You're jumping by feel. I hardly use the shadow. Really, though, the retro is just, it's like a weird hard mode. It's a weird hard mode. I prefer my games on very normal. And this game was still kind of odd in that sense. It felt good for the most part, but especially those last levels were just terrible. And the way that you control and everything, yeah, I don't know. In any case, I can see why this game isn't selling. I can see why people don't want to buy it. It's really unfortunate because I think there is a pretty good Crash game in here, but they were so focused on trying to evolve the Crash way of playing the game that they got way too ahead of themselves. They crammed in way too much weird shit with the masks, and they didn't focus on the fundamentals of what makes a platformer really, really fun. They didn't focus on the fundamentals. They wanted to spruce it up. They wanted to chock full of a bunch of shit. And it's good that there's a lot of content. Don't get me wrong. Reverse levels and all that shit. Collectathon. That's great. But I don't feel that they improved the basic way of playing the game. You know, speed, accuracy, being able to control the characters, the level design. It doesn't really feel like they put a lot of effort into that. They wanted to have these kind of gimmicks carry the game a bit. And I believe people are seeing that. I think people have seen it. I think people acknowledge it, and it makes it difficult for me to suggest this game to even people who like Crash. You know, like Croker wants to give this game a shot because he liked 2 and stuff. 2 is good. 3 is probably my favorite because it kind of hit a good balance point of not too difficult, but still difficult. You know, you still had to kind of go through things. I like that one. Most stages in 3 you can do one and done, you know, but you had to really pay attention, focus, and you know, you had good controls in that one too. So yeah, that's Crash. I'm glad I beat it, and like I said, I mean, man, it really, that last part really took the wind out of me. But I was prepared. I was prepared for that, and it wasn't fun. But we're done. It's over. It kind of took the wind out of my sails, but I had a pretty good idea that I was going to do that. So, it is what it is. Cool that we're done. I'm glad to have beaten it. It's another Crash game that just doesn't quite live up to what Crash is supposed to be about. It doesn't quite do it.